It's a black man Sunday. Time to put all childish things away. I refuse to be the man I was yesterday. Gotta put my best foot forward and elevate.
So Marvin, man, what's your assessment of this conversation and who you voting for?
Yeah, man, I'm being honest with you. I just have to stay neutral right now. I rather, convey. I listen to everybody, and I think it's a great conversation. Dr. Roslyn is definitely, have walked the walk, understand policy, and she's had her experiences with education, and brother Lynn, I have to appreciate him. Some things that he stood on, a lot of people didn't agree with. I did. So I get it from the whole surround. But for me, being a black man, and a lot of people don't like sometimes my language, but I just deal with reality, guys. I being in the Desert Storm War, having the top secret clearance, and being around, black men as generals, been around a lot of things that people are not aware of. When it comes to propaganda, when it comes to fake media, when it comes to information that we think that we're hearing, television tell lies visually. When you hear people that is astute that we look at that lead our country, and you can hear surround for 8 or 9 years that they're dictating and they're knowing that what we're looking at is about to happen. Privy to Jekyll Island, a privy to a lot of different things that we come about, Democratic and Republican. It's really a mixing bowl of one voice. Donald Trump coming in, really, he's showing up, guys, for really what's been in front of us all these years. A lot of Donald Trump monies have put people into being president, so he knows the game. I'm not standing up for Donald Trump. I'm not a Trumpy. I'm just being facts. But with decision-making, to give all of us our power back, getting into this last quarter of this year, going into 2025, I just want to make sure that we understand and know that we have the power for our kids, for our future. Let's get our power back. Going to vote for foods. I've never been a guy of advocate of saying anything in lack of limitation, because no policy and no president have ever changed my life. I'm almost about to be 53 years old, because it's a power, and I have not to be religious, but it's God expressed to me. I don't give too much power to anybody that's leading anything, because I know that's not where it stops. And that's not where it's going to begin. Again, I understand where we're at far as people. On my podcast, I just introduced a lady that was actually on Oprah. Her name was Jane Elliott, about one race, talking about black and white, or being a black woman, talking about being just where we've had to go through as black people. But on that higher frequency, on that level, I know going into this year, looking at Donald Trump or looking at Mrs. Harris as being the candidates, when you really look beyond the veil of it, I think that we need to get ready as individuals to do what we know what we need to do, and do it the right way, based on legacy, understanding, know what to deal with our financial literacy, and us stepping up and being special agents, whoever. If it's going to be Miss Roslyn stepping up and do more than what she has done, do more. Everybody needs to have a voice, because the voting aspect is going to put somebody in place. But the last decision maker, who really is going to make that decision in your house? Who's really going to make those next investments in the next 3 or 4 years? Is it an interest rate 1 or 2 going to change anything? Is the population increases with all the people that's coming over from Mexico, whether legal or illegal? Is that more people in this game that we're going to have to fear? Are we coming from fear? Are we understanding that what we know with Malcolm X and what Farrakhan and what all of us saying, not that we got to go to another country, no, we got to create a black this or white this. No, what I'm saying is we got to really be prepared for whatever the outcome is going to be, for us to be preventive maintenance, understanding that, rather when I went in, when I saw President Clinton, when I used to see top secret letters talking about United Snakes of America, not United States of America. And I'm talking about, I'm in the military. I'm in war. I'm looking at how they're laughing. So let's not be sheeple to the information. Because I'm gonna tell you something, these rich people, their family is here too. Oh, he's going to get a break if he get pulled over by the police. But still, guys, what I'm trying to get to see is just, let's just start really dialing in and don't put all our fruits on anybody that's out there. Vote and do what you know. What I say, saying what your heart is right, but do what you need to do what's right. I'm just more independent on what I know that I need to do for my life. And based on what I've did, on what my decision making and what my spirit have told me, I can look at them and I can say, you know what, Donald Trump, that's interesting. Kamala Harris, oh, I love you, sister. Thank you. But at the end of the day, I'm going to get mine. Nobody's going to tell me how much money I'm going to make next week. Nobody's going to tell me how much money I'm going to make next year. So we just got to get into understanding to do what we need to do, stand up right for what we think is right, because I don't know what's right in any of these panelists' eyes, but I do know that we're putting too much emphasis outside of ourselves when we really need to be understanding what we need to do and what we can do for ourselves. And we can, whether we go this way or that way, because this is the thing. I keep seeing people and decision makers say left and go right. So by the end of the day, yeah, Donald Trump has never been he's never been a president select, or where did he come from? He came from the business world. United States of America is a corporation. Right? Did anybody know that? People should know that. United States is a corporation, guys. You know, so this thing is ran. If we get the emotions, get out of it. Again, I'm not going Trump. I'm just basically saying that he's jumped in there and he's been doing what he's been doing. We're going to go out and take stuff out of his personal life. Oh, how could he do that? How could he do that? How could they do that? So, but when we really get to who's going to be the decision maker based on whether going to another country, what we're going to be doing with our monies, what we're going to be doing with this whole political race, just don't get so caught up in the race, and understand and figure out what you're going to do with your race, and make sure we hold our power in front of our eyes and say, you know what, but when I leave here, this is what I'm going to be talking about. That's all they're doing. So I'm just a little bit different, guys, because I just, you know, being around military, and that's really what all the government is. And the trillions of dollars that I've seen and the things that I've seen sign off on, I just don't play the games that other people play. And I've just been free ever since. And I just want people to just be careful and be very discerned on, don't get emotionally connected to it. Just look at your future and see what you need to do with your own future. And I guarantee you it's going to go right.
Lynn, and everybody on this panel, I appreciate it, because here's the beautiful thing about us. We've got to stop allowing ourselves to be described as a monolith. Like, we all think one way, we all march one step, we all serve one God, we all eat one kind of food. We don't. We are the most diverse people on the face of this earth. There's more diversity within the African American DNA than any DNA anywhere. But I want to just create certain points that I hope to leave in this conversation. Number one, this battle that we're fighting with the school board is a knee-jerk reaction that white people had in 1954 to desegregation. And we just been dealing with ripple effects, fighting the same enemy. The very first time the federal government got involved in spending money on education was to educate Black people coming out of slavery through the Freedmen's Act. The next time the federal government did that was when the southern states started closing their schools, saying we'll close the whole state down before we allow Black people to come to our schools. Then the federal government got involved in. And the next time when it became legitimate was when the Elementary and Secondary Education Act was signed as a part of the civil rights. What that meant, they now put money behind it and the laws to back it up. And it wasn't until then that the battle has been fighting to get into that fund, that pool of money. That pool of money belongs to us. What I'd like to do is, if we could sit down and have this grand conversation where we look back 150 years and say, what did we do wrong? What can we do better? And look forward 150 years and say, what will our children say? I think that that's a great place to start. And I say bring everybody to the table and talk, because hindsight is truly 2020, and far reaching vision is not blind. So we, even a blind person can have a vision for the future, and we certainly can have 2020 vision when we look in the past. And I think that that's what we need to do. Arguing about what's going on today is fleeting, and it's going to change in the next 150 minutes, trust me.
This is a big act of democracy. Just because we don't agree, it don't mean we have to hate each other. This is
Yes.
what we should be doing. This is how I get a lot done in Tallahassee. And that's my point. It's not a one size fit all. But when I hear you, it's going to build my cognitive, my intellectual capacity, because it's going to make me think about things perhaps through a lens that I didn't think about them. It might not change my view, but we all have some things that are absolutes for us, and it's okay. What I personally don't like is a lot of the hate. And because when we mimic the hate, then the kids mimic the hate. And I think any politician, any leader have to be responsible for their words. I try to make sure that my words are impeccable. When I'm saying things, I try to make sure they're factual. There's always good and bad to say about everybody. But because someone has a different perspective, it doesn't mean they're a bad person or I gotta hate them. I'm elected. I have Democrats, Republicans, and non-party affiliates in my district. I talk to everybody. I try to listen and represent everybody. And I think that's the model an elected official should have. But I also will go back to saying that the world would be a much better place if we collectively, and notice that I didn't say Democrats or Republicans, if we as a people begin to seriously look at the political determinants of social justice. When we look at laws that are made, and those laws negatively impact any group of people. I can talk about healthcare laws that majorly impact middle class and poor white people. Then we should make changes to those kinds of laws and those things that people are experiencing the same freedom. I'm not okay with 1% of the wealthy people wanting freedom and then wanting to use the government to control all the rest of us. I'm a faith-based person. I'm not okay with the government making decisions, healthcare decisions about my body. I'm not for abortions, but nor am I for the death penalty. That would make me line up from one party to the other. Both parties would be represented in that. And I think as individuals, that's the benefit of being in this country, that we express and we dialogue, and sometimes it get heated, but we learn from each other. We can't close our minds to think that our way is the only perspective. But as individuals, as an individual, I do have some absolutes, and maybe it's my bias. Like I said when I started, I'm Black first and woman second. And it's been hard on this road for us. Nothing has changed in my community, no matter who's been in office. But I have to have the hope, and I have to go with the individual. And for me, that's Kamala Harris, that I think is going to get me closer to that.
Gotcha. Great information. Great information. And we're going to wrap this up shortly, but we're going to let some of the brothers in the audience engage y'all. But Shaki, I want to start with you with this question. A lot of brothers feel more confident voting for Trump. They feel more comfortable with foreign affairs in Trump's hands outside of Kamala's. What's your take on that?
It's dangerous. I would say it's a dangerous thing for us if we were to give foreign affairs over to Trump to have him decide what America should and should not do and what's at play. Just recently, he was talking to Putin, but if I'm not mistaken, like that's a part of like the Logan Act. Like he's a private citizen. So I may be mistaken. And if I am, please forgive me and correct me in love. But trusting Trump with our foreign affairs, I feel like we would be in a further deficit than where we are. I think it will annihilate a lot of alliances that we built over the centuries. And it would just put us in a further deficit, whether we have alliances or if we don't. And I just think that it would be a horrible decision for us to do.
Well, for me, it's personal. So I don't buy into a lot of rhetoric that I hear. I subscribe to the fact that there are many strong Black men that love their families, that lead and protect their families. I personally don't feel that Trump would protect me. I feel that Putin, who is a master manipulator, a lot of those guys could just stroke Trump's ego and take advantage of him because he doesn't understand how dangerous they are. So I don't feel safe when it comes to foreign affairs. I spent the week in Israel with my Republican colleagues. And so I got to see of people being killed, all kinds of people that you never see on the news. Muslim, Jews, Christians, Black, white, Hezbollah and Hamas is killing everybody. I just feel that Trump's ego would allow him to be too easily manipulated and that he won't be able to protect me in any serious matter from in the foreign affairs. When I look at, you can't play with certain people and certain mindsets. When I look at the leader of Israel right now, I feel like he's totally playing the people. When you go there, they're protesting to get him out. He could have did something different in this war, but he's allowed it to go on. So when I see people's lives being played with and missiles and bombs blowing up every day, I just think that Trump is too naive and on this kick that they're going to want to show him who really got the power and manipulate him. They'll have some major secret and they'll be blowing us up. The vice president has been involved in conversations, have been doing foreign affairs. That's why you don't see the vice president is not a visible position. When you look at the last legacy of vice presidents, you didn't see Biden a lot when he was the vice president. You didn't see Trump's vice Pence a lot because they're doing different things behind the scenes and they are involved in a lot of this foreign affairs stuff that's going on. So I don't feel safe with Trump. I feel safer with anybody else in there than Trump or J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance called women that don't have children childless cats ladies. How offensive is that? It's to a sister who cannot physically give birth. But that says how he feels about women. So they might just decide to make all the women go get on the front line and receive the missiles. I don't know. I just don't trust them.
Dr. Harris, you have something?
Well, no, I was just really kind of echoing what Dr. Osgood was saying. The one thing we do know is that Trump can be played like a 10-cent whistle when you stroke his ego. I mean, he let himself get beat by Kamala. Kamala led him down the rabbit hole, and she ain't even good at doing it, okay? You get a master manipulator like a Putin, the Chinese leader, or even North Korea, that I think that's a really, really grave danger. And because, in a sense, when you look at the way Trump acts, he really wants to be like them. He wants to be the final word. He wants to be an autocrat. He wants to be the man. And so the real men can manipulate him, and that's a danger. And so, just based on that, the number one concern for him is his ego. And I don't think the American people come in a long distant second. And so, just based on that alone, I would say that's not a good choice.
I can add in a comment about foreign policy if you don't mind. So I think that the country would be better off with Donald Trump. And I'm gonna say why. The reason why is like she said, vice presidents aren't very visible. And in general, I could definitely see your argument, but like Dick Cheney was pretty busy and he was pretty visible, And if Obama's economy was so great, why didn't Biden just run in 2016? Because the economy wasn't great. It was actually flatline and stagnant. And that's why they wanted two outside candidates, because they were done with the Obama administration. Came out and he just recharacterized that recently. And then, like you said, he could be easily manipulated or whatever. But like, for example, Donald Trump still got his name on hotels, right? And we'll point out that he doesn't own those hotels, but those hotels pay him to put their name on it. So we got this idea that nobody respects him internationally, but yet there's businesses in other countries that still pay him to use his name. So maybe our view of his name brand equity isn't entirely accurate, or is not maybe synonymous around the world. Because same thing, like we talked about Donald Trump, I mean, Truth Social, he made a $4 billion company while y'all reminded me he's dealing with 91 felony charges in 4 different states. He built a $4 billion business. None of the way, and like the brother said earlier, America is a business. Right now, it's a business that's not making no money. We're letting in uncountless immigration. Inflation is through the roof, which is really stealing the value out of our money, all the money that we use to work for and survive. Then on the foreign stage international, Trump is the only one of these presidents not to host a new war. There was no boots on the ground when we had Trump. The invasion in Ukraine happened when Biden got in office. They said Trump worked for Russia. Turns out the person that said Trump worked for Russia was the one working for Russia. Yeah, white FBI, but he was the one working for Russia. So there was no link between him and Putin didn't go into Ukraine. Putin went into Ukraine when it was Biden in office. That's so if Donald Trump was so easily manipulated and everybody in the world disrespected him, when did we get 20 million immigrants coming into our country? Under Biden. We had Xi Jinping come to this country, right? We had the president of China come to this country and come to California a couple months ago. He shook Larry Fink's hand, CEO of BlackRock. He shook the CEO of Vanguard's hand. He shook the CEO of State Street's hand. He walked past Joe Biden. No, so if Larry Fink gets more respect than the president of the United States, and y'all want to follow up with his incumbent, his vice president, he doesn't have no respect. So she's supposed to get respect that he doesn't have. They came out and asked her, what about what Iran attacking Israel? She said, don't. Iran dropped missiles on Israel 48, it was like some 48, 72 hours later. We're almost on the brink of World War III, low key, between Israel and Iran and what's going on over there, between what Biden did with the Nord Stream pipeline. We got a lot of problems going on internationally. And then they say he's the autocrat. I don't see the autocrat part because he's always hiring people to go do stuff for him. Just like they got all the surrogates that come out and talk about him. He's always, I'm gonna hire this person, I'm gonna get this. He's always farming something out to other people. I mean, that's what the whole show was, Apprentice. So it's like he's an autocrat that's been the Republican nominee for 8 years. Kamala's been they circumvented all of democracy in order to make her the nominee. And she's only been a nominee for what we had, 80 days. So we act like she's the known commodity and Trump is the unknown commodity, but the numbers don't match.
All right. I see we have a brother in the audience. Press. Welcome to Black Men Sundays, man. Say your name, the city and state you representing, and let's get to it.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Tracy, based out of Philadelphia, and I do have to say that I do lean Trump, and it's just largely due to 2 things that I can't unsee, and it's I lived through a Trump presidency, I lived through an Biden's presidency, and my question to you guys, which Lynn did kind of speak about just a little bit, is if we're fearful of, how can we say we're fearful of what Trump might do in regards to world politics when he is the only president who did not get us involved in any foreign affairs? We did with Bush, we did with Obama, and we did with Biden. So if we're talking about who can keep us safe, we do have to acknowledge the fact that Trump is the only person who did not get us involved in any foreign affairs through his 4 years. So I just want to ask you guys that question because I forget who said it. But how can we be fearful of him and what he can do when he is the only one that did not get us involved?
So I said it, and I'm fearful because I honestly don't think that Trump is going to be able to complete the term of a presidency. I think that J.D. Vance has manipulated himself into that vice presidency. I have people that I know on both sides, people like Byron Donaldson, who is someone that I know and that I think highly of. And I'm very afraid if something happens to Trump and this country's in the hand of J.D. Vance, who, if you go back and look at his track record, he is extremely inexperienced, said some very, very horrible things about the political party that he's found a way to maneuver in. So for me, when I'm looking at foreign policies and I'm looking at triggers and what happens, whether we've been in war or not during those times, a lot of those things are predicated on other things that have happened. I don't trust Putin. I don't trust a lot of the world leaders. And so I'm afraid because I don't see overall where the 2 candidates on the Republican ticket collectively would protect me. And I'm saying that clearly from the lens of being a Black woman. I don't feel that they care enough about me to be overly concerned about me. I don't expect Trump to be able, if Trump wins, I don't expect him to be able to finish 4 years. I don't have any scientific evidence of that. It's just my discernment and where I am in my thinking with it as I watch him be very different today than he was the person when he ran before. To me, it's two different people. And I try to be, fair in my analogy. So that's why I feel unsafe.
I appreciate that response. Can I ask a follow-up question to that? I have a different opinion of JD Vance, but I respect your observation of him. But my counter to that would be is Kamala has the endorsements of Dick Cheney. She has the vice president nominee, which is Tim Walz, and she also has the backing of Obama. We know Obama lied to us about Gaddafi. We know Dick Cheney lied to us about weapons of mass destruction. We know Tim Walz lied about his time when he was actually in China for whatever reason. These are well documented lies, and these people are associated with Kamala. So we may be unknown about JD Vance, but he's not associated with anything in regards to a world affair that will give me cause to pause. So that's kind of where like I feel like our where I can't really truly understand where you're coming from because of who Kamala is aligned with in regards to
Okay.
world affairs and the liars associated with them.
So I won't even get into talking about lies because we don't want to go there. But I will say Kamala is the only candidate that's outwardly willing to work with both parties in her administration. Personally, that is very important to me. As a policymaker, I don't know everything. As a policymaker, it's very important to have the other parties and other people's views in play when you're making decisions. It is critically important. I don't see any other candidates running. Trump and Vance are not looking to do that. But for me, when I think about being the leader of America, no matter how democratic I am, that role pushes me beyond my political party. So if someone is willing to get everybody involved and everybody at the table, maybe the foreign policy experts are on the other side. When you're an elected official, you don't know everything. I have a certain wheelhouse in Tallahassee. I have to depend on both Democrats and Republicans to teach me and to learn from them things that I don't know about. That's why I work in a bipartisan way. So when you're leading the whole United States, it's very important for me, for my vote, that you're able to work in a bipartisan way, that you don't just close people out because they don't do what you say or because they're not in your political party.
I get his rhetoric, but to counter that point as well, it's he did align himself with Tulsi Gabbard, former House of Representative in the Democratic Party from Hawaii. He did receive the endorsement of Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's actually the only person who even showed any interest in ensuring that our food quality actually gets improved. He aligned himself with Elon Musk, who actually both of them are on different ends of the aisle in regards to electric vehicles. So I get the cause the pause in regards to Trump, but what I do see him doing is this time around, he's aligning himself with people who don't genuinely do think the way that he does. Thus, he is opening himself up to more opinions. Whereas I don't see Kamala doing that. Aside from getting endorsements, nobody's really out there going that she's advocating to be inside of her panel if she were to win. I just don't see that, but I do see Trump doing those things. So I can see people being scared of a 2016 Trump, but I do think this 2024 version of him did learn from the mistakes that he made previously, and he's willing to make the necessary changes. And ultimately, in a leader that I want is somebody that can acknowledge things that they did and then make the necessary changes as they try to move forward. And I just see that with
And you
him.
and
I
I
don't see
sit
that with
in
her.
we sit in many different places.
Hmm.
I attended the Democratic National Convention, and there were a lot of Republicans there, and they were welcome. It was a whole melting pot of people there, including people from the LGBT community. And I'm faith-based, but when it comes to people, I just believe that we all should have the same access and opportunity and not be judged by, per se, our lifestyle. The same way I don't like people that mess with my kids that wear baggy pants. So when I'm looking from the seat I'm sitting in, I just see something very, very differently. And I guess I still haven't, I haven't came to understand all of the rhetoric. When I hear a man talk about a woman, and every time a woman don't want to agree with him, he calls her filthy and nasty and stupid. I'm just telling you, as a woman, a Black woman, that's very hurtful to me. I can't be okay with that in a leader. If my pastor did that, I would get my stuff and walk out the church. If my mate did that, I'm gonna be honest, I'm a sister. I probably would throw some shoes at him before I left out of the house. So there are some particular things with me that I expect in characteristics. If Kamala was saying those things about men in that way, I would have an issue or a problem with that. If she was showing up talking about communities that are predominantly communities of Black people and calling them rat holes and those kinds of things, even if we believe that, as a policymaker, my job is to fix those things, not to further ridicule and put those people in those places down. So we're going to have some philosophical agreements. I just appreciate you brothers in this discussion today. It has been a very, very fruitful discussion. And just like your mind is made up, my mind is made up. I think about the different ages, that we bring to the table. I heard Dr. Harris. I'm not a person that's for integration. I think we might have been better off and less dependent on the government if we would have took care of our own business. So I'm just saying I don't fit in any box, but I think the time that I'm living in, my experience, especially around substance abuse, being a single mom who trying to live a certain way and was able to trust God and put 3 kids to college without a sugar daddy. It's just certain, y'all will get that after a while. It's just certain things that I need in order to feel safe, to know that my children and my grandchildren are going to be safe. And I don't see those things absolutely in any of the parties. But I have to choose the one that I feel is going to get me closer to where I'm going than set me back.
Great information.
I
Great
respect that.
information.
I was watching where all of the leaders who were close to Trump are not supporting him, including his vice president, his secretary of state, a host of others. What are your thoughts on that? How does that impact your feelings about Trump?
Was that a question for me? I'm sorry.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
So I'm glad you asked me that question because in 2020, I actually did want Tulsi Gabbard to become president, that she was my preferred candidate during the 2020 primaries. So when I look at a Mike Pence not associating himself with Trump this time around, I'm actually on board with that because I'm not a fan of Mike Pence. I am a fan of Elon Musk. I am a fan of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. I am a fan of Tulsi Gabbard. So these are the people that are now associating themselves with Trump. So that actually affirms my belief that he is the best candidate because people who not necessarily say I admired because I don't admire people I don't know, but people whose opinions I respected on in that realm, they're aligning themselves with Trump. So who isn't aligning themselves with them now, I care less about because, like I said, the people who I prefer are doing that right now.
But I mean, I'm just saying, when his own chief of staff, when his own close advisors don't support him, that doesn't bother you?
Not necessarily. You look at somebody like Steve Jobs. I'm talking to you guys on my iPhone. I love my iPhone right now.
I'm not talking about, I'm
No,
talking about,
I-
yeah, yeah.
no, I'm just using this as a metaphor. A lot of people hated working with Steve Jobs. However, I love the Apple product. So when I'm looking for in a leader is somebody who will be tough enough to ensure that the things that need to be done in this country do get done. How they go about it, that's no concern to me. I'm not looking for this person to be at my Thanksgiving dinner table. All I want is somebody who's willing to put the work in to get the job done. And I see that more in Trump with just the way that he is campaigning now. He is doing a lot more things than what he was doing prior in 2016. The public pretty much had to outcry to get Kamala to do interviews. She hasn't even done a press conference just yet, where she's taking questions from different reporters in real time and being able to respond without somebody telling her how she should answer that question. So I just I get people who worked with Trump in the past may not have liked him. That's fine. I just don't care that much about it this time around because the people who are aligning themselves with him right now, and that he is doing what I do believe a politician should be doing, and he is going into more communities this time around than Kamala. He is doing way more public showings, way more interviews. He's doing everything that you would want a candidate to do, and you can just do apples to
Yeah.
apples comparisons with this.
Yeah. But that's not true. I mean, Trump has turned down every interview that they've asked him to come on. Kamala's been on all the interviews.
You,
That's just not true.
it is, but I mean, I know we can go back and forth on that.
Press,
But
can you help
sure.
me, because I really like, and thank you for joining the conversation. Can you
Mhm.
give me your perspective of January 6th? You know, I saw a lot of violence take place, and I'm not talking about it from a blame game perspective, but could you share with me your perspective of January 6th and the whole insurrection?
Sure. Without coming off as if I'm a conspiracy theorist, this is my honest and genuine opinion, right? We have the number one defense system, military in the world, right? We knew where Osama bin Laden was living in Afghanistan or in Iran, wherever he was, right? You're telling me that we didn't have prior knowledge that people were going to be coming down Pennsylvania Avenue and maybe getting a little bit rowdy. We do know there's evidence that the National Guard wasn't presented. I don't. I do know that the immediate images that we seen were scenes of violence, right, where people were going back and forth with the police. We saw that on January 6th. Why did it take 2.5 years for us to see the other footage, where there was police officers actually walking people through the halls of Congress, where it looked like they focused on one specific section, but did not give us the totality of what was actually occurring. So that kind of gave me the perception of they wanted me to think one thing about it, and they succeeded in that. The media succeeded in that because majority of us did think one thing. So when you given me limited access to information in the beginning, and then I learned that other stuff was actually kept hidden, it does give me a cause to pause and say maybe what actually transpired on that day didn't actually transpire the way that I was meant to believe.
Let me just say to you, and thank you for that point. I was on the school board when the 17 people got killed in the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas tragedy.
Mm-hmm.
That happened in February. It was around November before law enforcement actually released the video. I'll never forget it. I spent that Christmas season watching every video I could because I needed to know in a real way, the best I could, what happened. It was very, very sad. So law enforcement would not release those tapes. I know that the media give different spins. I personally know congressional people on both sides who were there, who were hiding, who heard people yelling, find this person, kill this person, lynch this person. For me, none of us should be okay with what happened January 6th. And I'm not saying that you're okay with it, but it is not a good representation of America. It's just unacceptable for who we are as a country. But I really appreciate you, sharing your perspective. But know that when those kinds of things happen, law enforcement step in a certain way, and they take certain stuff for evidence, and they don't release it until a period of time that you're able to better understand exactly what happened. I still don't know exactly what happened on January 6th. I do know some people died, some people with bloodshed, some police officers was hurt, some other people was hurt, and Mike Pence's life was being threatened, and Nancy Pelosi. And I use both of them because it's a bipartisan, effort of who was being targeted.
I just want to step on this point. Touch on this point that Press said about the January 6th. Like, part of what had me with that narrative, and that's probably when I turned that my political views was on that day of January 6th, was because I just couldn't believe that they were allowing that to happen, right? I couldn't believe what I was seeing on the TV. It was disturbing. It was bothersome. But then I also had to step back and kind of look at this and look at the narrative. And when I step back from the narrative, it's the government. And as he said, the strongest and most mightiest military and surveillance capabilities in the world. And they're saying they were victimized by a bunch of Republicans that caught buses and planes coming into DC. You know, they, like for you can't go into DC. DC is the head of it. You can't move anything in Washington D.C. So all these swarms of people came. All these people, you know, all these people had phones. They had text messages. They made chats. They made reservations, and all these hundreds of thousands of people came. And then the idea is that the government was just caught off guard. And if only the government had more power and influence, they could make sure we don't see scenes like that. And reason why I got my attention is because, well, black people could be down there, and what they're trying to get us to do is co-sign the government having more power to deal with protesters. And when there may be an occasion where we're those protesters, and the same authority and influence we're giving the government to deal with protesters will turn around and be used on us. And it's the same tactics they did, like in the counterintelligence program that they was running against the Black Panthers, running against Martin Luther King. When the FBI and J. Edgar Hoover ran that counterintelligence program, they used these same tactics on the Black Panthers. So, like for example, one of the things I've been wondering is how many paid CIA and FBI assets were there. So if you look at the January 6th, the one person that was convicted of insurrection wasn't even in D.C. on the day of January 6th. He's the leader of the Proud Boys Association, right? Well, the reason why he got put in jail is because the Proud Boys already had an FBI informant within the group. He was documenting their behavior and their actions. So right there, we got the FBI and the Proud Boys. We got the FBI undercover and the Oath Keepers. The governor that was getting was supposed to have the kidnapping in Michigan, that got thrown out because of the entrapment charge, because the undercover FBI agent in that group, that white militia, white supremacist, he messed up the whole entrapment. He got entrapment charges because the idea to go kidnap the governor was his idea. The idea to blow up the bridge was all his idea. And so the FBI did all those guys got off on those charges. So, and just like they did just a couple weeks ago, they literally had the CIA director and they asked him on the mic under oath how many paid assets were there on January 6th and what was their assignment. And he refused. He says he can't answer and he can't give that number. So there was paid government assets in the crowd, and then we act like everybody in the crowd's behavior is Donald Trump, because that's what I said. They did the black folks, right? We had the movie come out not too long ago, Judas and the Messiah. They just show how it happened with Fred Hampton. But if you read the counterintelligence program, they did that. They got brothers that were working for the government to go undercover and join the Black Panther Party, to go to protest, and then just to be violent, nasty, and mean to people, just so they could put it in the paper that the Black Panthers are violent, nasty, and mean.
Well, let me
I
say,
can't
let
act
me
like
be, let me be clear. I don't see those people that were operating on January 6th. I see them as white supremacists, very different from Republicans. A
Mhm.
lot of Republicans are not a part of that group. And I do understand that the government play those games because you heard me talk about substance abuse. And when Bush made his first speech, he said, "This is crack cocaine." He had it in a
Yep.
bag.
The
And he
biggest,
said
he's
he
the
bought
biggest
it.
drug dealer.
He
Biggest
bought
drug
it
dealer.
right outside the White House. He bought that crack from an 18-year-old kid named Calvin that they set up. The undercover cops set him up to sell that dope outside the White House so they could come on TV and make crack public enemy number one and continue to criminalize people like me. So I do agree that different games are being played, but I like to ask people that question because as humans, we should not be okay. If we feel it's the government that's killing people and doing this, we should be going after them. Whoever we feel is perpetrating this kind of violence, we need to be going after them and speaking up about it because it's people's lives that are in play. But I want to be clear, most Republicans would not have been involved in any way or promoted or okay with what happened with January 6th. I like to make that clear because we get into talking about mega and white supremacists, and it's two different things. I
And see,
experienced this legislative session with a white guy coming into a committee meeting telling me that we got to protect white supremacists, basically calling all my colleagues racist. And I work with them, for the last 3 years. I don't think they're racist because everybody that's Republican is not a racist. There are some Democrats that are racist, but I do feel that many people, including Black people, feel some kind of way about certain Black people. And again, I bring the history of being a person in recovery where we're always stigmatized. I can walk into a place now and people hoopla because I'm the senator. But when I get real with them, because I'm always real, and I talk about the 2 felony convictions and having a drug addiction, they go to try to looking at me funny. But I'm from the hood, so I know I'm somebody special. I've been the apple of my grandma and granddaddy's eye since I was 2 years old. So people can't make me feel no kind of way about who I am.
Yeah,
I
that's
like
great
that. I
information.
like that.
Yeah. I did want to touch on, when I was looking at why a lot of Black men are selecting Trump, immigration, housing, inflation, definitely the economy. So I definitely want to talk about that before we get out of here. A lot of brothers were saying that, when Trump was in office, they made more money. Biden came in, the inflation came in, and they're struggling to live. Let's talk about that. And I'll start with Dr. Harris first.
Just looking at the timing, Trump came in and basically had 2 years to ride on the Obama success. The last 2 years were basically the pandemic. I mean, that's just what it was. Biden comes in at the tail end of the pandemic and basically starts a reconstruction to build things back. In the meantime, you have the inflation. But remember, for some reason, people think that the Democrats or the Republicans are responsible for prices. That's all about the private sector. And that's one of the reasons you got some of these strikes going on now, because a large part of the inflation, some was as a result of the government, just the way the economic system works. But on a very local level, a lot of it was corporations price gouging. Isn't it curious that you go from one store to the other and you see the same price? You're on the airlines. I was going to fly to Puerto Rico, and every airline had the same price. So there is no choice. There is no competition. And so, just based on that, I say that the end result was you can make Biden look bad if you want. I'm not. Everything Biden did doesn't make sense to me. I can't figure out what the border deal was. I'm good with the inflation because I know that a lot of that was price gouging. When corporations, there's no such thing as a free market in this country. All the corporations get together and they take advantage. They know people don't have any alternatives. They got to spend. Some of the other policies were crazy, but I think that if you really look at the once again the big picture of economics, that over the term that we have, as far as the issues in the Black community, over the next 4 years, that Black people will be better off under a Harris administration, under a Trump administration. But it's not just a Trump administration. There's a bigger agenda. When you talked about Dr. Osmond, you talking about being able to, if you notice, all the Republicans vote together on everything. So does that mean that all of their constituents feel the same way about that? No, they have an agenda. And so they always vote together on their agenda. And so Democrats have an agenda too, but the Republicans really have an agenda. And if we really look at where our community is going to come in reference to that agenda, with cutting down the access to the vote, with undermining public education where most of our kids are, where all of those kind of real things that impact our community on a very real level. And it's not just Donald Trump; it's an administration. It's a mindset. The 2020, and I mean, it's very interesting. Donald Trump tells you what he's going to do. He says, "When I get in, I'm going to go after some of the people who disagree with me. I'm going to follow that 2020 agenda there. They basically accepting that now, where you put political appointees in charge, so that once one person gets in power, then you will never get a Putin out. Okay, the once person gets in power and that power is consolidated, then it's not going to be good for us as a people."
Okay. Dr. Osgood, Lynn,
So,
responses?
yeah, so economically, I see us going and trending. Like, for example, another probably the biggest thing that made me, again, you see, I'm from Pittsburgh, you know, the Steelers symbol, most people don't know this is symbol for the components that make steel. This city, my great, they were sharecroppers in North Carolina. They moved. Grandfather moved up here and got a job in the steel mills, and they were giving out jobs, and those jobs paid good. And they took black men, they took white men. You came up there, you was gonna show up on time and work. Since the late early '80s, the steel industry has disappeared out of Pittsburgh, and likewise, that's why we're known as Steeler Nation, because people have had to leave to find economic opportunities elsewhere. I have a friend of mine that is a union leader here. I played football with in high school, and he changed his mind on Donald Trump, and it was because Donald Trump um, wrote tariffs that started to protect some of the steel industry in this country, and that would eventually help union workers, and that would help us.
Anything with the government is a trade-off. So when you are making decisions in the government, you make decisions in the moment. So Trump did his policies to cut taxes for corporations. I think their tax rate went from 35% to 21%. And this stimulated investment and consumer spending at that time. But over a long term, it created more, it grew the national debt. And I think that we as elected officials we're not transparent enough about the budget and how it moves. So you have a pandemic. You got to act in an emergency way to address the pandemic, and you got to get money in. So Trump does those tax cuts. Immediately, it increased stocks, it stimulated the economy. But over a long period of time, and we've heard them often say that Biden did not take away a lot of them. So we're talking facts and truth as we're talking in this space. So the tax cuts themselves did not significantly increase inflation. But in the long run, there's been many economists that talks about how it increased our national debt. So if we owe more money, we need to borrow more money, and it's passed on to us. Let me talk a moment about tariffs. And this is my pet peeve again. I told y'all I'm honest, a lot of this is personal. So this nice, pretty dress that people been commenting to me on all day comes from Temu online. I paid $12 for it. When we put the tariffs on China and Mexico, those products that we needed to import, it means the importer, which was here in America, paid more. The cost of the tariff then gets passed on to us as a consumer. Yeah. So right now, if there's a $4 additional $5 tax put on China, the person that's importing these dresses here in America is going to charge me now $17 for this $12 dress. So when we think about some of the things that have happened, it's an accumulation of over the time. So when we talk about the increase in costs and the goods and service from China and other countries that we rely on for materials, it was a good start to try to keep some jobs here. But those tariffs and those taxes over a long run puts the country overall in a greater deficit. And we begin to see this whole inflationary impact where it results in higher prices for certain consumer goods for us. So the government initially gains. The economy is stimulated, investments go up. But as a time period go on, and remember, Trump put in a lot of those tariffs, Biden did take a lot of them away. And now as a consumer, the brunt of that cost has been rolled back to us. Let me explain it this way. Told y'all I'm in recovery. I ain't always been a preacher. There was a time I was in the game, okay? If I'm in the game and my product is costing me more, I'm going to charge the consumer more. I'm going to get them less for the same price. It is the reality of the way that business works. When we look at what's going on, no matter who the president is at this time, we would be paying more. We continue to downplay the pandemic, and I'm not blaming the pandemic on anyone. It's something that happened that I don't believe any of us are responsible for it happening. It's one of those things that we can't control. When we look at those dynamics, I'm in Florida, the series of unusual weather that we continue to have, the hurricanes, the tornadoes, the storms, the overfreezing of places. All of these things cost the government money. Eventually, the government has to do something. Something is adjusted in order to offset that cost. And I think these are the real conversations that we need to have about money and inflation, so that not only certain people benefit. Now, for me with the brothers, my main thing that I talk about with my sons, and let me just say, if I didn't have 2 felony convictions, I would own a gun. The law doesn't allow me to. But the violence that I continue to see happen in our communities, and I continue to see policymakers make decisions to put more guns on the street. I'm for responsible gun owners having guns, but we don't do anything to stop the guns. As we're talking about the borders and people coming in, there's a lot of guns and different things. Where I'm in a neighborhood now where I'm seeing kids make Glock switches on a 3D printer to make a regular gun shoot as an automatic. When I go to data, it tells me that the more guns we put on the street, white male suicide increase, child suicide increase, and homicides increase with black men and black women, because sisters, you know, they ain't gonna just throw shoes now. Now they gonna go get a gun and they gonna shoot. By the way, they're the leading population that's buying guns. So these are some of the policies and things, for me, I'm looking that's gonna uplift the community. And I was talking to Lynn in the chat about police immunity. I don't believe that anyone should have immunity. I think that everyone, if something happens, everyone should have their day in court. I don't think that I, as an elected official or police officer, that I should be able to just kill somebody and not have it questioned. My day in court will prove whether I'm guilty or not. Then for me as a black person, a black mom that sees so many of our black men get targeted and killed, and now black women, being in a district where the cops beat up one of my kids at a high school, and I had to get the community to protest, not even in my neighborhood, but it was a black kid. And because we had a black sheriff, we were able to get that cop charged. The kid didn't even have nothing to do with the fight that was going on. But if police officers have immunity, we won't be able to do that. So there are some things that I feel are germane to the well-being of black men. And as a mom and a person who is a strong supporter of black men, I would want to protect them by supporting policymakers that are going to make decisions that say to me that at least they are paying attention to the disparities and the things that are happening to black men.
Great information. Great information. All right, Lynn, I'm gonna let you hop back on, and then we're gonna wrap this up, man.
Okay, cool. I first I just want to touch on, I'll get back to what I was saying about the economy. I just want to touch on what she said about police immunity. The reason why I'm kind of in support of what they call the police immunity is not because I'm unaware of what the police can do or how we are disadvantaged by that community, but it's specifically because of an experience we had in Philadelphia about 2 years ago, where there was a young white kid who was about 12 years old, and he ended up in a police chase with cops. He bailed on the car. He was running, and during being pursued, he shot at the cops. The officer shot at him. The boy eventually died. The officers were black. The shooter was white. And those officers were criminally prosecuted, although they did exactly as they should have done as their duty for their job. Right? I don't believe cops should be immune from when they do stuff outside the scope of their duties, but we got a lot of brothers that are police in this country and they feed their families because they're police. And I don't see why those brothers should be open to be personally liable when they're doing something that's within the scope of their duty. If anything, I think it's their commanding officers, it's their brass or their administration that should be responsible. And I'm not saying that to not hold them accountable. I think the officers that are on the street in our community are the most held accountable out of anything, because they got to interact with the community. They still got to deal with the police force. They're not really welcomed in our community. And at the same time, like you said about gun ownership, the more reason why more people are buying guns is because crime is going up, and black women don't have, we don't have a lot of people protecting. We got a lot of single sisters out there. So the best thing they can have for their own protection is a weapon. And we got the right to have the Second Amendment, not because it was the safest way to run a society, but it's the safest way to ensure that society doesn't fall victim to tyranny, right? Like they talk about hunting all the time, and we talk about safety, but when the dudes that made this country was talking about the British was coming, they weren't scared of deers and they weren't trying to go hunting, right? is when a tyrannical government chooses to go beyond the bounds that we allow them to be governed, we got to have a last line of defense against tyranny. And that's what I think we got gun rights for. But back to the economy, thing I don't get about inflation is that we got this idea where I think everybody is being totally misunderstood about what inflation is. Inflation is an inflation of the money supply. Price gouging cannot cause inflation. The reason why the value of money goes down is because the supply of money has increased. Just like anything, the value of it goes down because economically and in reality, value is based on scarcity. That's why there's less $100 bills than there are $1 bills. It's because the $100 bills are more valuable, so they're more scarce. Dollar bills are less valuable, they're more plentiful. That's how it goes. We don't have inflation because of COVID. We have inflation because our government has spent more money than it has taken in. They have printed money they don't have. That's the only thing that inflates the economy. We can have it like they say, well, inflation is different than everybody around the world. Inflation doesn't matter about anybody around the world because each one of them have their own economies. We can't affect the inflation in Japan. Japan can't affect inflation here. Likewise, tariffs cause inflationary effects on prices, but that doesn't mean it causes inflation. And we do need to have those tariffs because we had tariffs in this country before and we didn't have the need for a personal income tax. They got rid of the tariffs, gave us the excuse of funding World War II to get us with the personal income tax. And then now we're up here in the future again arguing about what's paying our fair share as inflation. If you look it up, you don't believe me, look up Milton Friedman. He used to be the economic advisor for Ronald Reagan. Milton Friedman was a professor of economics. Look up and ask him, where does inflation come from? He'll tell you that politicians lie about where it comes from. They'll tell you it's corporate greed, but corporate greed been around. That's what built this country. So what's causing inflation right now? It's not corporate greed. Last time we had this inflation was a 40-year high, and it was Carter. We started out with having the problems. The reason why the problems, gas went up, we let Joe Biden get in and voluntarily start stopping the production of oil. I trade in stocks. Oils are sold in futures. That's because the future supply of oil dictates the current value of it today. So when you go ahead and you send signals to the market that the future supply of oil will be down, that increases the cost of oil today. And everything that is shipped to any grocery store gets shipped by something that ran on gas. So the price of that went up, just like the price of the truck to run it went up because the gas price went up. That's something that Joe Biden and them voluntarily did. This was not market driven. This was an ideology that they put into place that failed. And then we keep trying to blame it on all these other things that has nothing else to do.
All right, Dr. Osgood, Dr. Harris, any comments on that?
Yeah, well, let's just say thank you, Corey, for bringing this group together. It just shows how the different opinions will create different actions. Based on what people believe to be true for them, they will act on it, and that means different beliefs bring about different actions, and the actions that we commit will bring about consequences. And there's a phrase that one of the great things about living a long time is you get to say, "I told you so." And so, so I'll just leave it like that. That time will tell, and all the truth comes out in the wash. Thank you, young man. I'll tell you this, Lynn and press. I am super impressed at your articulation. I don't agree, but I am super impressed that you are very articulate in stating your position. It makes sense, okay? And, you know, everything is an interpretation, but I really am super proud of your ability and the way you have interpreted the things that you believe to be true. Many people, I was watching an interview, and the lady said, "I just like Donald Trump and like his policies." She said, "Well, which policy you really like the most?" She said, she couldn't think of one. So she said, "I just like all of them." Okay. But you, young man, I tell you, you all have really singled in and thought it through, and have come to conclusions that you're comfortable with. And, other people come to other conclusions. And as I say, time will tell. And thank you. I'm glad to be on here. I had no intention of spending this much time, Corey. But you get it. It's rare to get to talk to young black people, articulate folks. That who have something to say. And uh, Dr. Osgood, thank you so much. I mean, said you're not only very smart, you're very pretty, so that makes it even better. It's great to look at a pretty woman who's smart. I mean,
Mhm.
so, and the other young lady who was here, I mean, that makes it all the better. Like somebody not, and the same goes with a man. A handsome man saying anything looks good. Like, yeah, brother, go ahead. But thank you so much, Corey, for putting it together. And let's all of us work on what we believe and be open and receptive to other perspectives. Let's try to see the bigger picture. There's always, when you get to one mountain of information, you think you know it, and you look up, doggone, there's another mountain. And to keep climbing those mountains and really begin to see, aha, you know, I see now we're inside a great dome. And now I can understand how all these pieces to fit. I'm a firm believer in the matrix, and we're all in the matrix. We're in different places, but we're up in the matrix, and it's all coming out in the wash. So thank you so much, Corey. Let me go and try to get my poor wife, poor baby. She's probably hanging off the side of the bed, starving. She has
I
back.
appreciate you, Doc.
Okay. Thank you, fellas. Y'all have a great evening. Thank you, everyone, for super discussion.
And I'm
Definitely.
glad to
Thank
be
you.
here. I'm not surprised. I know and continue to be exposed to very brilliant Black men, young Black men. I can sit all day because this is what I do in the Florida Senate, sit for 12 hours and have these kind of debates and discussions. Thank you, Corey, for what you're doing with this Black Men's Roundtable because it presents Black men in a positive light. There are many brilliant brothers, just like those of you that are on this call, across different age dynamics, and I think we have to continue to show platforms like this. I'm also a lifelong learner. So I heard a lot tonight, things that I did not necessarily know or agree with. But I will go do the research because that's how I'm wired. As a policymaker, I have to be a continued learner. As a person of faith, I have to be able to talk about things in a truthful way because I also have to show the world that there are people in elected office that genuinely care, may not have all the information about everything, but's willing to listen and move. That's why when people say they change their position, as you live in life, the more information you get about different things, it should change your position sometimes. You shouldn't have the same mindset today that you had 10 years ago. And that's what I see a lot with my generation of people. And then they show up and say horrible things about young people or treat them in a certain way. And I raised my kids to be strong and not take mess from nobody. So when the young people diss them, then they feel this. But that's how I raised my kids, to stand up, speak truth to power. So I appreciate you guys allowing a woman into this space for Black men. And I think it's very important that we continue to have these conversations so that you see how I'm feeling. Just because I'm a strong Black woman don't mean that I don't need a strong Black man to lead and protect me. I don't buy into that other rhetoric. But a lot of times we're not even at the same table where we're sharing how we feel. Somebody said, don't be emotional. Well, I'm emotional. My feelings matter, and I have to be able to express those feelings. So thank you guys so much, Corey. I look forward to us future discussions around mass incarceration and Black maternal health, some other things that, I feel are really detrimental per se to Black women that we don't even know how to explain to y'all. We don't even know how to communicate to y'all a lot of what we're feeling and what's going on. We expect you to be mind readers, and that's something that we got to change. But I just appreciate you, brothers, so much. And then when I'm in Philadelphia again, I was just in Philadelphia with this group called Power. I'm gonna see if I can find you where we could hang out. I was over at the OIC building.
Oh,
Um,
yes.
yeah, with Dwayne Royster and that whole group. So I
Okay.
kind of move across the world, but the next time I'm out, I love to come find people and meet them face to face. So if I'm in Pittsburgh again, I'm gonna look you up so we can hang out, me and your family, and I want to see them babies you talked about.
Definitely,
Thank you,
I
Corey.
definitely. That'd be a pleasure. Thank you. And I look, I agree. I had a great time on here. I'm glad Corey put it together. I'm impressed by both you guys, like Dr. Herbert Harris. I actually got his book. I got that book at my house. So I didn't know, I didn't put it together till you put the sign up. But I already liked you before I even met you. So and I'm very impressed with you. Like I said, I think that's what we gotta have is be able. First off, I think we like the brother said earlier, we're not a monolith. So and then at the same time, we got to be able to have conversations in our community so we can figure out what we want in our community for us. And that takes that rigorous debate. It takes some time to go at it, but it's only the thing that I like about it is all we trying to do is how to make things better around us. No one's talking about how to make more money just for themselves or just make their life, but we talking about how to make things better for people around us and do something for people that they can't do for themselves. And then to that, that's admirable.
Great, great. Well, I'm gonna go on and wrap it up. This Black Men Sundays, the election debate. Decide who you're going for. You heard all the information. This Black Men Sundays. We're wrapping it up. And by the way, don't forget, you see that QR code. All you have to do is scan it on your phone and make that contribution. We're doing 3 Boys and Girls Clubs of Central Florida. So we need 500 turkeys. Let's get to it. Black Men Sundays. I appreciate all our panelists, all our guests. Enjoy your evening and enjoy your work week. Peace.
It's a Black Man Sunday.